Hello. So one of the foods that we most associate with Easter is the hot cross bun. Now you can go and buy those in the supermarket, that's fine. But why don't we have a go at making some ourselves? Now don't be daunted. Some of you will be used to making bread. Some of you won't, but it's not that difficult. You've got a process that lasts about 3 hours in all. The first part of that is the mixing and the kneading. Takes about 5 minutes, and then you leave it to rise for about an hour and a half, something like that. Then you shape your hot cross buns, leave them to rise again, and then bake them in the oven. So you've probably got about 10 or 15 minutes work and quite a lot of waiting, but it's really worth the wait in the end. So what are you going to need? You're going to need a mixing bowl. You're going to need some strong bread flour. And here I'm using a 50-50 mix of white bread flour and wholemeal, because I really like that texture of the wholemeal. White just seems a little bit sort of plain and fluffy, but the wholemeal really adds something to it. You're going to need some bread yeast, comes in sachets at the supermarket, the fast-acting stuff. Some salt, some sugar, some mixed spice. Either some mixed peel, or actually I don't really like mixed peel, so I prefer some zested lemon. Here you are. An egg, some melted butter and a little bit of milk, some hot water, and finally some sort of dried fruit. And here we've got some raisins. Okay, so let's make a start. So here's my bowl, and the first thing I'm going to do is put in the sachet, one sachet of dried yeast, followed by a teaspoon of sugar, which when you add the water just gets the yeast working, and 150 mils of just lukewarm water, about 30 degrees, something like that. So pour all that in, and I've got my handy sauce whisk here, and just mix that together just to get it going. It actually starts to work pretty quickly because it's the fast-acting yeast. Okay, so then we have our flour. This is 450 grams of, as I say, a 50-50 mix of white and wholemeal. Chuck all that in. And as with any bread making, you do need some salt, otherwise it doesn't taste quite right. So one teaspoon of salt goes in there. And also a teaspoon of mixed spice, just adds a lovely zingy flavour to it. There we go, and some mixed spice. Okay, and then we have in here 50 grams of melted butter, you can quite see in there, and about 50 mils of milk as well. So it's all just melted. It's not hot. I put my finger in. It's just sort of a liquid. Let's pour all that in as well. And in our jug, I'm just going to beat an egg as well. You're basically chucking all the ingredients in. It's quite simple. Our lemon zest. Bung it in, actually it all goes in. About 50 grams of extra sugar, so obviously it's quite a sweet bread, hot cross buns, so you do need extra sugar, so about 50 grams. There we go, and then about 100 grams of dried fruit, so about half of this lot here. That'll do. Right, so there we have, this is all our ingredients, just in one bowl. So quite simple. And you're just going to, first of all, mix them up into a light dough. And then you're going to start to knead it in a minute. And I'll show you how to do the kneading. It's not that complicated. So you just see it's just beginning to come together. Okay, so there we are. So that's just a bit of mixing. Forgotten one thing. Back in a sec. Right, here we go. So I'm just going to put a bit of oil on a board. This is just sunflower oil. You can use olive oil if you want as well. And just get that going there. Okay, now I'm going to just scoop up the dough, and you'll see what it looks like in a minute. There we are. So here's our dough. It's sticking together, but it's still, you know, a bit rough and ready. So we're just going to start to knead it. So what I'm doing with both of my hands, my right hand, I'm sort of pushing forward, and I'm folding it back and turning it. So I'm pushing forward, folding it back and turning it. And what that's doing is it's getting all the gluten in the flour, all those bonds to strengthen, so that when the yeast starts to work, it'll actually rise. So this kneading doesn't need to be laborious. You'll start to feel that the texture comes together, and you know, it doesn't feel that it's going to fall apart anymore. It feels like a sort of a cohesive ball. And if you feel that it's starting to stick on the board, put a little bit more oil on there. You can, instead of oil, you can use flour if you think that the dough is getting too dry, but this is fine at the moment. And as you're doing this, you can just think about, you know, you're creating something, which I enjoy. And you know, as you prepare for Easter, maybe, you know, you can use this time for a bit of reflection, preparing for that. And this is a good thing to do in family groups as well. Have a sort of a family hot cross bun batch making session. So we're actually nearly done now with the this first stage. Sorry, the fruit's flying everywhere. Not to worry, that'll happen. And you can just see now that this dough is becoming quite smooth, and it begins to sort of spring back when you pull it. It springs back, so just do a couple more. You could also make this dough in a bread maker on the dough cycle. So you can't bake hot cross buns in a bread maker, but you can do the dough and then just divide them up and bake them in the oven. That would work fine as well. I quite like doing it by hand. Okay, so I think this dough is ready now to be left. So you can see it's a nice ball there. What I'm going to do is put a little bit of oil, tiny bit in my mixing bowl, just sort of move it around, and I'm just going to leave this now in the mixing bowl with some cling film on top. Somewhere just sort of room temperature, but if you have an airing cupboard or something slightly warmer, then that's great as well. So that's just in there, and I'm going to leave it for about an hour and a half, and the yeast will do its work, and it will pretty much double in size. Sorry, you can see me now. You can pretty much double in size, and then we'll start to divide it up, make our shapes, and then we're nearly ready for baking. So I'll see you in a bit. Okay, so we're back again, and we've waited about an hour and 3/4, I think. Let's see how our dough has got on. And yeah, look, it's a lot bigger than it was, about twice the size. So what we're going to do now is cut it into our individual hot cross bun shapes. So just put it on a bit more oil. I'm going to divide this into, I think, 8. That'd be about right. So that's 4. And that's 8. Okay, so let me show you how to do that. So you just get one piece on the board, you're going to just flatten it out. And the idea is that you're pushing the air out of it. It's called knocking it back in bread making terms. So you're just pushing it out, I just do it 3 times. And then you just take, imagine it's a square, you take the opposite corners and you fold them towards each other, like that, and you flip it over, and just use the sides of your hands to make it a ball and flatten it slightly. And then because it's a hot cross bun, just carve a little cross on the top. There we go. So we're just going to do 8 of those just quickly. So flatten it out, turn it. Three. 4. And then we're going to leave these for about half an hour just to rise a bit more and then bake them. So this is really the last bit of work you have to do before you get to eat them. So that's 6. Can be a bit rough and ready. 7. And 8, so we'll just do our crosses. 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. So I'm just going to put the cling film back on those just to keep them moist. Okay, and there you have them, and we're going to come back in half an hour, put them in the oven and see what they taste like. See you later. So the final stage now, your balls of dough have risen for about half an hour and they're ready to go in the oven, about 180 degrees C on a fan oven for about 17 minutes, something like that. Keep an eye on them so they don't burn on the top. Before you put them in, if you want to put a glaze on them, some sugar dissolved in water just sort of brushed on the top, or even a beaten egg brushed on the top. I haven't done that. So put them in the oven, and then when they come out, they'll look something like that. Here's the one that I did earlier. So they look very homemade. They smell really inviting, and it's very satisfying to have done them. So let's just do a quick taste test. Yeah, you can taste the mixed spice and the fruit. Really good. Enjoy making them. See ya.